Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering Arsenal's struggles continuing as they lose to Inter Milan. We'll discuss Real Madrid suffering a second consecutive defeat at home in the Bernabeu as they lose to AC Milan. We'll talk about Correa's late winner that stunned PSG and gave Atletico Madrid the 2-1 victory. We'll discuss this week's Champions League fixtures. Just do an overview roundup of the games that happened this week in the Champions League. And stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you some of my reactions to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. If you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes the show successful, and we thrive on your energies and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat feature at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your super chat gets put right on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really couldn't do what we do without your amazing support. We're so thankful to have you as part of our community. So hit that super chat button. Let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button. Let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can always go to the gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, or leave a comment or question there. We really couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. So, we have to start off though. With Arsenal, their struggles continue. They lose to Inter Milan. 1-0 win, 1-0 loss for Arsenal. Arsenal have been struggling of lately in all competitions. We know the loss that they had this weekend in the Premier League, that they suffered to Newcastle. If you look at in the last 6 games, they've suffered 3 defeats. They drew a game against Liverpool. Their only wins in that 6-game stretch came against Shakhtar Donetsk and Preston at the AFL Cup. Hasn't been the best stretch of games for Arsenal. If you're an Arsenal supporter, it's been a little rough. If you're watching your team almost concede the title this early into the season, it's getting that rough for Arsenal. When you look at the fact that they're sitting 5th in the Premier League, they've already suffered 2 losses. They've dropped points in 5 out of the first 10 games. They've fallen 7 points off Liverpool, 5 points off City. And keep in mind, they have a game coming up this weekend against Chelsea away. And then in the Champions League, you suffer this 1-0 loss today that you did to Inter Milan. And against Inter Milan that, honestly, they put out a little bit of a B team, almost like not quite a B team, because you still had important pieces like a Lautaro Martinez, a Hakan Çalhanoğlu, a De Vrij, a Jan Sommer, a Dumfries. But you also had some important pieces of this team on the bench not involved. You're talking about Alessandro Bastoni, Federico Di Marco, Nicolo Barella, Enric Mkhitaryan, Marcos Thuram, who are all important pieces for what Inter Milan want to do on a game-to-game basis. Simone Inzaghi decided to give a lot of his important players of a rest, and probably has to do with the fact that this weekend they do take on a Napoli team who is currently sitting first in Serie A with 25 points, a point above Inter Milan, who are sitting in second. So obviously that's a massive game, and in my mind, Inzaghi has, or what I'm assuming is Inzaghi is resting and doing a little bit of rotation in this game to be 100% in that important heavyweight battle this weekend in Serie A. So I can understand why exactly. There's that aspect to it, of course. But if you're looking at Arsenal, this is many games now that Arsenal, and by the way, the great thing about this one game is Martin Odegaard, he was able to get his first appearance since suffering that ankle injury that he did with Norway. So there is that aspect to it, and that will boost Arsenal. But when he has been gone, and let's just consider he came on late in this one and didn't really, have that big of an impact as expected with the ankle injury coming this late. But if you've seen Arsenal since his injury, they have struggled to create. They lack that cutting edge in attack. They lack creativity without him, and because of the fact that Kai Havertz, he's not the most creative player playing in midfield. Trossard, the same. Saka, Martinelli, they're not really creative players. Your fullbacks are not creative fullbacks like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson are. You have two center halves playing fullback that do what they can going forward, but don't have that passing range and ability that that a Reece James or a healthy Reece James they'll have, or anything at that top level going forward. You don't get that from your fullbacks, and you don't have much creativity without him, and you're lacking cutting edge. Sometimes they lack a little bit of dynamism in attack. It's a team that looks almost clueless on how they're gonna get the goal, and without that, drawn up set piece, essentially a training ground set piece or a wonder moment of magic, there is not much goes into this team. They don't look that dynamic, and they could have played that game for another hour or two. It didn't seem like Arsenal was going to get that goal unless Inter Milan handed them that goal. You didn't see how they were going to create. Arsenal, they had 20 shots, but they only were able to get 4 shots on target, which shows that they're having to, the shots, they got 20 shots, but they're not high percentage shots, not threatening shots, no clear cutout opportunities, almost half chances and a lot of half chances and a lot of trying to make something out of nothing sort of opportunities. I thought Arsenal had a moment early on in the second half, or later on the first half. I'm forgetting exactly when it was in the game, where they took advantage of a turnover. Martinelli or Havertz is able to find Martinelli, and Martinelli decides to try to be vertical and get it past the near post of Sommer, hits the side netting. I'm struggling to find real clear cutout opportunities. Now, of course, Inter Milan, despite having a lot of, despite arresting Di Marco and Bastoni, this is a team that's always going to be solid defensively, and they're not going to give much space in between the lines to play through. They're not going to be they're not going to be crazy open and allow themselves to get ran in behind. They have a good defensive backbone to them. And it was always going to be that way. You have the quality as well from Lautaro Martinez that could be threatening. And yes, this wasn't the first team for Inter Milan, but when you're playing against this Arsenal team, you get that one moment. That one moment may be enough, and turns out that moment came from the handball from Mikel Merino, in which, look, that led to the penalty with Taremi's back flip. Look, I have sympathy for those close range penalties, because it's just, it's just so hard to react in that way. What I don't have sympathy over Mikel Merino is you're defending in your box. Why do you, yes, I understand you need to move your arms to create leverage, but he has his arm hand out like this. When you have your arm hand out like this, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. One ricochet goes straight to the hand, how are you going to defend yourself with that? You can't defend in the box with your hand up like this. Even if you're making slight movements to adjust your positioning to get on the right side of Taremi to block off any sort of opportunity he can have of having an attempt at goal, or even playing, or even doing a flick on or anything of that sort. Yes, I understand having to move on to get positioning, but you shouldn't be moving your hand like this. It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate because, again, I talk about how Arsenal really didn't create that much going forward. Inter Milan, they had a few opportunities in transition that they could have done a little bit better on, but overall, didn't create a whole lot. Without that opportunity, I really didn't see how Inter Milan was going to get that a goal. I thought this had 0-0 written all over it before that penalty, but it takes a moment like that, penalty for Inter Milan. Hakan Çalhanoğlu, an extremely experienced player, slots it straight down the middle, 1-0 for Inter Milan. And then in the second half, they were able to close shop, defend really, really well, and get the result. They have a professional way of doing about it. They defend really, really well. They're opportunistic in the counter, in the attack. Yeah, for Arsenal, I said the same issues again. The lack of creativity, not being able to create much. They had that opportunity from Saliba on a corner kick that he could have done better on. There was also another opportunity from Gabriel, a flick on. But again, it just shows, it proves my point exactly what I was saying about Arsenal and their lack of creativity. Their best chances from this game came from set pieces. I have to say, their best chances from this game came from set pieces, came from 2 corner kick opportunities. Apart from that, I don't remember a real clear-cut out opportunity. I know Kai Havertz had a little bit of an opportunity where he did really, really good on, tested Jan Sommer on the back post with the curling effort. But apart from that, it's pretty. It's pretty rough to watch, I have to say. And there was some interesting aspects of this game as well. Mikel Arteta, he got a yellow card. He got a yellow card for essentially he grabbed the ball and might have not been fully out of bounds, and led to a little bit of controversy. He ended up getting a yellow. Not necessarily controversy, but he ended up getting a yellow. Apart from that, though, look, your Arsenal, obviously Inter Milan is definitely a better team than Chelsea at this moment in time. One is competing for Serie A's and Champions League. The other team is trying to make their way back into the Champions League, make their way back in the top 4 of the Premier League, obviously. But I have to say, yes, this loss is a pretty bad loss, but it's a forgiving loss in that you play in this Champions League format with 24 teams, or with from 9th place to 24th team, get to play in a playoff to get into the knockout stages, to get into the round of 16. There is a little bit mercy there is in the Champions League. There is some leeway you can have, and you can suffer a defeat like Arsenal did. So I do think the level of importance of this weekend's game against Chelsea is much higher than this game. As I said, obviously Inter Milan is a better team than Chelsea at this current moment in time. But at the same time, with Chelsea, at the same time, Arsenal can find themselves, if they lose to Chelsea away, depending on what happens with Liverpool, they can find themselves 10 points off Liverpool through 11 games. And also another huge thing is, let's say Man City can take care of the deal this weekend as well. They can find themselves 8 points off Manchester City just after 11 games, which is, wow, that's almost impossible to come back from. Usually City are doing the comebacks, let alone now Arsenal. It's a massive, massive game. If you're an Arsenal fan, it's going to be a difficult one with the way Chelsea has been doing away to Stamford Bridge. And yeah, I look forward to previewing this game more in a whole later on this week. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Real Madrid's 3-1 loss to AC Milan.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed Arsenal's struggles continuing as they lose to Inter Milan. We move on to discuss Real Madrid. They have suffered a second consecutive defeat at the Bernabeu as they lose to AC Milan. Frustrating loss for Real Madrid. Last two games have overall been really, really frustrating. They suffered that 3-1 loss to AC Milan. They lost 4-0 to Real Madrid. And you go back to the third game before that, Borussia Dortmund really got dominated in that first half and was losing 2-0. Now Real Madrid went on to score a ridiculous 5 goals in that second half and turned that first half thumping into a second half embarrassment going the other way. But maybe there was a little bit of signs that we should have taken from that game and some of their early season struggle, that this Real Madrid team is not as good as they are last season, not yet at least. And in these last two games, that theory has been proven almost, to say, it was a really bad loss that they suffered to Barcelona. Really shocking the way they got thumped at home, and now in the Champions League, in the league that they're fortress in, they lost to AC Milan 3-1, and they deservedly lost to AC Milan. I thought AC Milan looked more energetic, looked more lively, had more cohesion, had better cutting edge, looked more like a team, defended better. And it was shocking to see. AC Milan has not had that great of a season this season, I have to say. You look at Serie A, they're currently sitting 7th in Serie A. They've dropped points in, 5 out of their first 10. 5 out of their first 10. They've been pretty poor so far in Serie A. They have moments where Paulo Fonseca has been under pressure as well. So, and I've watched them play now quite a few times this season. I watched them play against Inter Milan. I watched them play against Liverpool. I watched them play against Lazio. I watched them play against Napoli. And now in this game against Real Madrid. I have to say, this game, they have been the most impressive one. which is a little damning if you're a Real Madrid fan. I think this is the game that they put out their overall best performance so far, and maybe this is a turning point for them this season to really get it turned around, to get themselves back into the top four and potentially go on a run in the Champions League. Because before this game they were sitting on 3 points of their first three games. They were in a little bit of a vulnerable position. I believe they lost the first two Champions League games. But now they're sitting in 6 points after 4, which is not great, but it puts them in the midst of a position to play a knockout stage game in January to get into the round of 16. They're level on points with actually Real Madrid, who are also sitting with 6 points from their first 4 games. With this loss and then the loss that they suffered to Lille, which is, look, obviously the context of this loss, it's a bad loss if you're a Real Madrid fan, because you're having to take you're having to have basically almost a perfect last 4 games to put yourself in a position where you get a home, where you get a automatic qualification into the round of 16. If you're a team like Real Madrid, if you're a team like Manchester City, if you're one of these, great teams in Europe, a Liverpool, a really great team in Europe, you want to put yourself in a position where you don't have to play any unnecessary games in January, that you can go automatically into the round of 16. And to do that, you have to be in the top 8. Right now, Real Madrid are sitting 18th. So the ramifications of this loss is huge in that manner. If you're a Real Madrid team, you do not want to play unnecessary games. You're a team that is competing in La Liga, competing in Champions League. You're a high level of a team, and you shouldn't be playing unnecessary games, if not necessary. That's not what Real Madrid. And it's weird because this is a new format and we don't really know what to expect. But, it'll be a very big disappointment if Real Madrid have to play 2 unnecessary games in January. And that, look, as far as their performance against AC Milan as a unit, there should be some concerns if it are Carlo Ancelotti. As he said himself, should be some concerns. Didn't have one goal outside of that penalty, didn't score a single goal outside of the penalty, didn't create much from open play. Looked pretty easy to play against in the defense. I thought the way that they were cut apart on that Reinders' third goal says a lot on the current stage of this Real Madrid team. They're too easy to play against. It's too easy to play through their midfield, which is confusing, because you have Tchouaméni in there at that point where the penalty happened. You had Camavinga in as well. There is some and Valverde. There is some athleticism in that midfield, but for some reason they're just easy to carve up. They're easy to control in there, and for me, I was very alarmed by that. I was very alarmed by how they have no balance in the attack as well. Mbappe, Vinicius, they don't look. There's no cohesion with that front two. You're thinking that it can be fluid and they can interchange and all that, but there is no fluidity now. I think Carlo Ancelotti decided Rodrigo is better off the bench now, and he wants to go with Vinicius and Mbappe up top and allow them to be fluid, but it's just not working. They're not picking up spaces that can put. Kylian Mbappe is hardly even getting involved. In the certain moments he is getting involved, he's not being clinical when the opportunities come, and he's not being assertive enough. And again, the fact that he's not even getting involved is concerning and should be alarming. I'm asking Mbappe, what is to blame now? What do you have to blame now? There's been a lot of stops, not a lot of stops, but there's been other moments in his career that he's been able to have excuses over, or he's been able to finger point and deflect. But now Mbappe is coming into a team that is proven they are Champions League worthy without you. So you have to go and make it work. They don't need you. They're not gonna throw everything bedside for you. And Mbappe so far has been failing the test at Real Madrid. He's been having a poor season. And if you look at the statistics, I believe he has 6 goals in La Liga so far. No, not 6 goals so far in La Liga this season in 10 games, which is not a horrible stat line. 7 goal and assist contributions, or 9 goal and assist contributions. And wait, did I do the math right? 7, 8, 9, 10 goal and assists of contributions in 15 games, which is not the worst statistics. But if you look at the performances, especially in the games that he's struggling in, especially against the top level opposition, he's struggling to even get involved. And it's starting to, I've always thought he was, but it's starting to make other people also question, is Mbappe the problem? Is Mbappe an issue? Is Mbappe overrated? Can he be blamed for Real Madrid's early season's woes? I think he's answering, or the performances of Real Madrid and him all as a whole, everything together, is pretty much answering that question. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we react to Correa's late winner that stunned PSG as Atletico win 2-1.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed Real Madrid suffering their second consecutive defeat at the Bernabeu as they lose to AC Milan. We move on to react to Angel Correa's late winner as Atletico Madrid stun PSG. Wow. Definition of a smash and grab, definition of a goal against the run of play. Oh my goodness. So PSG early lead by Zaire Emery, take advantage of a bad mistake by Longley trying to play out, gets caught on the ball. I believe Dembele is the one that ended up turning him over, plays in a nice little ball to Zaire Emery, lovely little chip over to Oblak, 1-0 Atletico Madrid. Speaking of Oblak, we'll discuss him a little bit later. Equalizing goal comes really shortly after, out of nowhere really, because Atletico Madrid didn't create much up to this point. Didn't really create much the entire game. But Nahuel Molina been at the right place at the right time, taking advantage of some deflections and bad defending. Ball gets into his path. Really good finish, by the way, smashing it into the far post on a half volley. of sorts. Really great finish by him to make it 1-1. Then, PSG, they bombarded the goal. They had a lot of opportunities. Hakimi had a few opportunities to maybe play someone in, maybe get a better strike on goal. They look like the main protagonists. They had 22 shots of the game, despite Atletico Madrid 9 shots on target for PSG, 3 shots on target for Atletico Madrid. It was all dumb, especially in that second half. If anyone was going to get the winner, it was dumb. Hakimi has a really good opportunity again. Ends up drawing a corner kick. You're thinking, okay, this is PSG. Literally the final kick of the game with 92 minutes on, you only have 3 minutes of stoppage time. You're about 2 minutes into the stoppage time. PSG, they're putting a lot of guys forward for this corner kick, trying to win it at the end. And, Oblak is able to get on the end of it. And, as soon as Oblak gets on the end of it, I'm thinking he's going down. Atletico Madrid are going to survive in this one. He's going to go down to the ground. He's going to send all the players forward, boot it forward, full-time whistle. That's what I'm thinking. Instead, he grabs the ball and he notices, in a split-second moment, he notices, there's a chance at the counter. PSG put all their guys forward. So he quickly runs to the edge of the box. He flings a throw to Griezmann. And you have some Atletico players making some runs going forward. Griezmann plays a long diagonal ball into Correa. Correa is able to control it. Correa is driving with the ball on the edge of the box. He actually had a few opportunities to play the ball into the back post for, I believe it was Lino. Probably was on the back post, someone of that sort. He decides to cut onto his left foot, take a shot at a goal. Donnarumma couldn't save it, and out of absolutely nowhere, Atletico Madrid get that late winner. 3 points for Atletico Madrid, and PSG suffer a horrible, gut-wrenching loss. Obviously, if you're an Atletico Madrid fan, you can't put into words how big of the result this is. You're currently sitting on 3 points after 3 games, and, a draw in this one doesn't do much for you going forward. You need to start racking up wins. So obviously for Atletico Madrid, a huge win. As far as PSG, big loss for PSG, because this puts them now only on 4 points after the first 4 games, which right now they're sitting in 25th, which is outside the zone that qualifies for the knockout stages. Or that qualifies for the playoff in January to reach the round of 16. They're not even in that position. Right now, they'd be out of the Champions League if it ended today. And it's been rough. And if you look at PSG so far in the Champions League, they're pretty lucky to have the points that they had. Their one win came against Girona in a game in which they, really lacked cutting edge, really lacked that final ball, really lacked that quality, and the devastating ability in the attack, and they relied on a own goal from Gazzaniga, who essentially allowed the ball to go in between his hands into the goal. And that's how PSG have gotten their only victory so far this Champions League. They're pretty lucky to even be sitting on 4 points from the first 4 games, and it's something that they It's an issue with this PSG team, because now you're sitting on 4 points and you have Bayern to come up with. Bayern away, which is never easy. They still have to play Manchester City in this Champions League as well. PSG could be in serious doubt, because you're having to play Bayern and PSG already. Your other 2 games are against Salzburg and Stuttgart, which is not the worst games in the world. But Bayern and Man City, with the way PSG has been playing so far in this Champions League, why do you expect them to get anything from any of those 2 games? How can we expect that of them? And they're going to need to get a result in those games because, well, as I said, they're sitting 25th right now. And with this new Champions League format, 25th is not good enough. But again, there's really no format in which 25th is good enough to say the least. And yeah, they need to fix their issues. As far as Atletico Madrid, they survived. They've had a pretty rough last couple of games as well themselves in the Champions League. They suffered that bad loss against they suffered that bad loss to Lille, but they also had another really bad loss to Benfica. And their last two games before this one, they've been combined for 7 goals for the opposition to only 1 for Atletico Madrid. So the way that they bounced back here was really good. But again, talk about the same issues with Diego Simeone. This time it was Alvarez and Griezmann. Can we get some cohesiveness? Can we get some consistency in terms of the lineup choices? It changes every single time. And I sound like a broken record because I keep saying the same thing over and over again. And, this weekend against Las Palmas, we saw Griezmann and Alvarez. This time around, we saw Griezmann and Alvarez yet again. Look, if that's what you want to go, if it is Griezmann and Alvarez, and then you want to play that four in defense and then the 4 block in midfield, no problem by me. Just be consistent in it so these players can have a little bit of cohesion and allow their chemistry to improve. But yeah, short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a full reaction to this week's Champions League fixtures.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed Korea's late winner as Atletico Madrid defeated PSG. We move on to react to this week's Champions League fixtures. Obviously, we talked about a little bit of this week's game so far in this show. We talked about Korea's late winner as Atletico Madrid stunned PSG. We discussed about Real Madrid losing at the Bernabeu to AC Milan. We talked about Arsenal who lost to Inter Milan. But obviously there was a lot more games in this week's Champions League fixtures. And there was a lot of interesting games. There was a lot of high drama. Barcelona, they're continuing to prove they are a top team. Barcelona, how many games so far this season have they had 5 goals, 7 goals, 4 goals? It's just been the amount of goals that they've scored this season has been ridiculous. They already have 40 goals in La Liga through 12 games. Let me repeat that. 40 goals in La Liga through 12 games. And in the Champions League, they've scored 15 in 4 games. It's been ridiculous. It has been absolutely ridiculous. The goal scoring ability of this Barcelona team, the way that they create a lot of opportunities with their high flying sort of ways. And now they put 5 past Grivnis Vista at the Red Star Stadium. By the way, Grivnis Vesta is also referred as Red Star Belgrade. But yeah, what they did against Red Star Belgrade, it's sensational, and Robert Lewandowski, he's continuing his great start to the season. Rafinha gets on the score sheet again. I've said this a lot of times now. If the season ended today, he would be the Ballon d'Or with the way that he's been playing. He's been absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, Barcelona as a whole, this team is ridiculous. Going away to Serbia, dominating the game, 70% possession, 21 shots, 9 shots on target. For Barcelona, you should be very, very excited about how this team looks, and should be very, very excited going forward, thinking about this team because I lost my train of thought. But because you've had a lot of injuries this season, and there's still some clear holes that you need to address in the team, especially when you look at that holding midfielder role. The fact that you're still sitting as high as you are in La Liga and Champions League, and you're having these performances, you can't be nothing other than excited about this team going forward. But yeah, great win if you're a Barcelona fan. Club Brugge got a 1-0 win over Aston Villa. Bizarre game. Now Aston Villa, they've had a perfect start to the Champions League, 3 wins from 3. But they've been struggling. They entering this game on a 2-game skid, 2 losses that they suffered. They suffered the EFL Cup loss to Crystal Palace, and then that bad loss that they suffered to Villa. They also dropped points as well to Bournemouth on the Saturday before that loss that they suffered midweek to Crystal Palace. So last 3 games, form has been a little low, and they came into this one in that form and really struggled to create that many good opportunities. And then the goal came in the 52nd minute. The handball, which it's a handball, Tyron makes, just brain fart, horrible mistake, and it just leaves too much of a gray area if the referee decides to have sympathy in that moment, because obviously Tyron Winks didn't willingly handle the ball. He didn't realize the ball was in place, trying to readjust it, and yeah, it's at the end of the day, you have to be more aware, and it's a blunder. Unai Emery said it's the biggest mistake. I believe he said something like that, or he said it's a really, really big mistake. But or it's the biggest mistake I witnessed. But yeah, it happens. It's overall, disappointing loss. But if you're Aston Villa, you should be able to recover from this. Shakhtar Donetsk 2-1 win over Young Boys. Georgi Sudakov had a really, really good game for Shakhtar, I have to say. Brest 2-1 win over Sparta Praha. Their really good start to this Champions League has continued. They're 4th place right now with 10 points from their first from their first 4 games, which has actually put them tied for second with Sporting Monaco. Inter and Inter with that 10 points. They've been really, really good. And I've been pretty impressed with them. This is their debut Champions League campaign, and to be as consistent as they have been so far through these first 4 games, taking advantage of the teams that they should take advantage of, I've been more than beyond impressed with Brest. Bayern, they get the 1-0 win over Benfica. It was Jamal Musiala who scored a header. Not necessarily what you think of when you think of Musiala. Out of all the things that he does, heading the ball has not happened to be his top ability. But his header is able to get that breakthrough needed for Bayern Munich. I thought Benfica defended really, really well through the first 65 minutes or so. Playing away at the Allianz Arena, you understood that they were going to be tight, and they made it difficult. But Bayern were able to get the breakthrough. And other than that, didn't really seem like Benfica was able to create that clear cutout opportunity that they needed to equalize. They only had they only had 26% possession. They only had 1 shot the entire game, not a single one on target. And yeah, it's just the quality of the 2 teams really showed in this one. Salzburg 3-1 win over Feyenoord. Karim Konate getting the player of the match for Salzburg as they win in this one. Atalanta 2-0 win over Stuttgart. Lukman and Zaniolo were able to get on the score sheets as Atalanta now sit with 8 points from their first 4 games, which is also a pretty good start for them. So far, good win for them. Going to Tuesday's game, PSV got a 4-0 win over Girona. Dynamo got a 4-1 win over Slovan Bratislava. Monaco 1-0 win over Bologna. Speaking of Brest, really good start. Monaco has had an equal start to them. If you look at it in terms of points, they're sitting on 10 points from the first 4 Champions League games. They've looked pretty good as well. It was Thilo Kehrer, the former PSG player, that got that late goal in the 86th minute to get the victory for Bologna. It was a massive, not Bologna, for Monaco. It was a massive result for them going against Bologna. Bologna, haven't had a really good start to their season, but can still be difficult to play against, especially playing away from Monaco. And to get that result, great result from them. Dortmund were able to bounce back that dumping that they had against Real Madrid, specifically in that second half, to get that 1-0 win going up against Sturm Graz. Doniel Malin's late goal was able to get that tight victory for Dortmund. Celtic were able to see off Leipzig in this one, 3-1 win. And it was actually their former Leipzig youth player, Nicholas Kuhn, who was able to get on the score sheet twice for Celtics as they earned their second win so far of this Champions League campaign. Celtic, they find themselves right now in 15th place with 7 points through their first 4 games, which is pretty good start from them. Now, if you're Leipzig, man, that's just the nail on the coffin for the season. They came into the season as a pot 1 team in the Champions League from 4 defeats from 4. It's going to take a Himalayan effort for them to get out of this Champions League group stages. They still have Inter Milan to play. They still have to play Aston Villa. Still a Sporting Lisbon that have looked really, really good as well to play. It's almost over for RB Leipzig. It's gonna take something remarkable for them to keep out. of this to keep themselves in the Champions League. Lille 1-1 draw with Juventus. They both move on to 7 points. Lille and Juventus after they shared points. This one, Jonathan David, he's been amazing in the Champions League. Gets on the score sheet yet again. For them. Dusan Vlahovic gets the equalizer for Juventus. 1-1 draw there. Liverpool 4-0 win over Bayern Leverkusen. Liverpool what a performance from them. That second half, they were absolutely breathtaking. Probably their most complete game so far this season. Definitely their most complete half. That second half was getting that 4-0 win over Bayern Leverkusen. Great results for Liverpool. And then the other game, Sporting Lisbon, managed by Ruben Amorim, who's set to become a United manager in the next few weeks or so after the November international break. 4-1 win over Manchester City. Victor Gyökeres hat-trick helped Sporting get this victory. It was a great victory for Sporting Lisbon playing at home, who have actually had a really, really good start to their Champions League campaign as well. So, short break here coming up. When we come back, we react to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. Before the break, we discussed this week's Champions League fixtures. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines. And we have to start off with Bruce Arena. He is returning to MLS as he is hired by San Jose Earthquakes to be their sporting director and their manager. Arena, he has had experience managing these roles. He did this with LA Galaxy and the New England Revolution as well for a period. And Arena said, I think it's an interesting job. It's certainly going to be challenging. They were they were very impressive, and they're committed to making this club better. When he was speaking about how he was impressed by the proposed level of commitment from John Fisher, the owner, and the rest of the front office. He said they were impressive and they're committed to making the club better. I think there's potential there to develop the club into a team that can certainly be better than they've demonstrated over the last couple of years. Tyrone Ming, we discussed that actually. Neymar, he is out 4 to 6 weeks. Again, just after returning, he suffered an injury in his second game back. He is expected to undergo 3 treatments and rehab that should last from 4 to 6 weeks after he suffered a hamstring injury. Al Hilal confirmed this on Wednesday, and also it has really intensified some speculation over Neymar's future with Al Hilal. Look, Al Hilal has spent a lot of money on Neymar, and the investment has not been recuperated. Of course, he has spent his entire time at Al Hilal up to this point rehabbing, and obviously, Al Hilal has to start getting frustrated with that, because that's a lot of money that they spent not only to get him because they had to pay a transfer fee, but a lot of money that they're paying Neymar on his wages, and yeah, it's just sad. We hope that this injury is just the cause of him, overdoing the whenever you suffer an injury, especially to the extent that Neymar suffered, you tend to put too much pressure, too much weight on other body parts in the surrounding areas, and other tendons or other muscles could go, specifically like a hamstring muscle. Just putting too much pressure on that, trying to overcompensate for that injury, and can lead to other injuries. We're hoping it's just something like that, and something he can rehab back from, and he could get back to playing. But yeah, who knows? Of course, y'all know Neymar is my favorite player, and this is a vulnerable topic for me to talk about. But it seems like a player that is in decline. I still have hope, of course, but again, that's just someone being optimistic. You're looking at it from the outside. There's not really much, but who knows what the deal is. Mohamed Kudus, he has had his suspension extended to 5 games, and he has been fined for £60,000 after violent conduct he suffered. After violent conduct he was convicted with in last month's Premier League defeat to Tottenham. Kudus, he was serving already a 3-match suspension, because when you suffer a red card, you get a 3-match suspension, and but since he was found guilty of violent conduct, this suspension is extended beyond these 3 games, and now he'll also miss the Newcastle United game on November 25th and the Arsenal game on November 30th. Kudus, he was actually a part of a very heated altercation between him and between players, between Tottenham and West Ham players in the 82nd minute, on a play where he fouled Van de Ven, and Kudus, which Kudus first pushed Van de Ven in the face, and then he also did that to Pape Matar Sarr. The referee actually gave Kudus initially a yellow, but then VAR stepped in. He did a check, and because of violent contact, it ended up being a red. And Kudus, he's a great, really good player, very, very important for West Ham, but can't do that. And yeah, his suspension has been extended. Some really sad news coming out of the Bayern Munich camp. So Bayern Munich got the 1-0 win over Benfica, but that loss is overshadowed by a tragedy. There was a death of a fan who actually attended the game, and Bayern, they said on early Thursday morning, said that they received the news that the fan died while he was being transported to the hospital. Bayern fans, they didn't sing or chant during the game out of respect for the person. So basically, Bayern Stadium, the atmosphere was very muted. a few minutes after kickoff when there was a medical emergency in the stands that required the attention of paramedic and police officers. The Bayern supporter club under 12 actually said the members would not be supporting as usual today because of because of an emergency medical intervention. Life comes before sports. We wish the family and friends lots of strength. The Bayern supporters did not resume chanting even after the person was carried out on the stretcher. After about half an hour, Bayern said in a statement, "A medical emergency in the stands of the Allianz Arena cast a shadow over the game right from the start. Out of consideration, the Stuttgart refrained from its usual voice for its support for the team, and the club also reduced its coverage of the match. Around an hour after the final whistle, the German record champions received the sad news that the fan has died on the way to the hospital. FC Bayern is in the mourning side by side with the fans' relatives." Yeah, obviously that's really, really sad. You never want to see something like that, and we hope that we pay our respects to to all the relatives, to the friends, to the family, especially associated with the fan. And it's just a tragedy, and it's a pain to see things like this, of course. Thank you guys, though, for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go.